Hello there. I'm Jennifer, if you don't know me, and I am a dog trainer, not a performer. So I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you being here and saying hi and supporting me. It really helps me to share the stuff I've got to share, all the cool stuff I have to say. And today, what I have to say is all about the art and science of dog training. Um, and I hope to just impart the excitement I feel about dog training, and just to share with you how really cool it is, how much there is to it. So let's dig in. First of all, I guess it's important to note that dog training is both. There is a lot of science that goes into it. But that's not the whole picture. It's quite an art as well. So yeah, maybe you know, maybe you don't, that dog training is all about behavior change. That is what it is at its core. And behavior science has come a long way in the last 100 years. And before then, people have had dogs for a lot longer than that, and people were training them for longer than that. But without the studies and everything that we have done in the last century or so to learn in a scientific manner, how we are actually influencing behavior, we kind of had to feel our way through and make some assumptions based on what we saw. And also people felt differently about dogs. So as our attitudes toward dogs has changed over the years, and as dogs have started to move more into our homes and to be treated more like family, we've also grown our knowledge base about how to work with them and provide for them. So that's a lot of change in what's really a pretty short amount of time. But I feel so grateful for the people who have done the work, done the groundwork to really build the knowledge that we have now. I feel very grateful to be the recipient of that and to be able to share it with you. So I just think this stuff is so cool, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today. So where to start is, I guess the first idea is really that there are laws that govern behavior the same way that the laws of physics govern our world. We know this through scientific study, and these laws of behavior exist and operate on us and everything else in our environment, whether we know about them, whether we understand them or not. It's that much of a hard science. And I think it's important because without that science to guide us, we kind of get a little lost. We can get so far without the science, but the science really takes us that much further. And especially when it comes to our dogs, a lot of what we might call common sense solutions and the cultural information that gets passed down over the years, a lot of it's actually quite misleading and can actually make things worse for us and our dogs. So the science comes in and helps us where our intuition kind of leads us astray. And one of my favorite stories, and a really great example of this, is the story of Clever Hans, the horse. Anybody know of this story already? If you haven't, that's okay, because I'm going to tell you. I think this is a really, really cool story. So Clever Hans, the horse, is a really great example of why the careful study of behavior is important. And so Clever Hans, Clever Hans was a horse owned by a German man named von Osten, and von Osten thought that he had taught his horse to do math. He was absolutely convinced, and what he would do is he would write a math problem on a chalkboard, maybe, I'm not sure, but he would write down a math problem, show the horse, and Hans would tap out the answer with his hoof. And von Osten was so impressed with his horse, he wanted to tell a lot of people. People that saw this were so impressed and convinced that this horse could do math. And so as word spread, some scientists heard about it, and they asked him if they could study what was going on. So they very cleverly designed some tests to really break apart and isolate what could be going on. And so they did these tests, and they discovered that Clever Hans the horse could only give the correct answer if his owner von Osten knew the answer and if Hans could see von Osten. So they figured out these pieces, and they did a couple more tests, and through some careful observation, they finally put it together that what was happening is Hans, he would stop tapping, essentially, when von Osten looked up or raised his eyebrows. So von Osten would look down at Clever Hans as he was tapping out the answer, and as soon as he got to the right answer, von Osten would look up to see if the horse stopped. And what the horse was doing was cueing off of his eyes or his eyebrows. And so what was happening was not that Clever Hans could actually do math, but that doesn't mean that the horse wasn't clever, right? He was very clever. He was very observant, and probably what was happening is when he would stop tapping, because he was noticing this human's eyes or eyebrows, he probably was rewarded and reinforced for that behavior, and so it became a thing. And von Osten really, really, really was convinced that this horse could do math. But the moral of the story here is that things are not always what they appear to be. And this happens a lot when it comes to our dogs. You know, there are so many dogs. A lot of us have dogs, and you know, through our experiences, we feel like we know a lot about them, if not pretty much everything sometimes. But this story of Clever Hans really shows us that, oh, I think I skipped it. Nope, I didn't. We're good. That really the science can help us figure out what assumptions that we're making are correct and which need some further understanding. So, as I said, there's a lot of misunderstandings that are repeated and spread even to this day about our dogs, and I've just put a bunch of them up on the screen here now. I'll kind of read through them quickly. I'm not going to really dig into all of them today. I just want to show you that this is just a start. This is a small sampling of a few of the misunderstandings, a little bit of the misinformation that often is passed around and it seems to be common knowledge in the dog world, but all of this stuff is incorrect or misunderstood. That dogs are pack animals. You'll hear that everywhere. Not exactly true. That dogs might poop or pee in the house out of spite because they're mad that you left. Not true. That using food to train is bribery, and if a dog is trained with food, that they will only listen when you have food. Also not true. That dogs have an innate desire to please, and so they don't need to be reinforced with food or other rewards. That playing tug makes dogs aggressive, that comforting a scared dog will reinforce their fear, that puppies shouldn't go outside until they've had all their shots, that dogs are trying to dominate you and that we have to be the leader or the alpha, or that a wagging dog is always a happy dog. All of this stuff, not true. If you're watching with me, tell me, are any of these things on this list stuff that sounds true or that you've always thought is true and might have questions about? If so, and if you'd like to dig in a little bit deeper on any one of these, do let me know in the comments. Because I love to dig into the nitty gritty. This is why I get so excited about dog training, and is because once you dig in, stuff gets really, really interesting. But as I said, this is a sampling. There's so much more that we have a much better understanding of now because of the scientific study that we've done about behavior. So super cool. A lot of these things seemed to make sense, but they can be better explained through science, which is, I have a great respect for science, and that is why I think this stuff is so cool. So we take a scientific approach because feeling and assuming and just making simple day-to-day observations isn't quite enough to get the understanding or the results that we want if we're actually trying to change behavior. So what are some of the things about animal behavior and dog training that we have learned from scientific study? Some of this you may already be familiar with, such as classical conditioning. So a lot of us learn this in Psych 101. We learn about Pavlov's dogs, where Pavlov was a physiologist, and kind of by accident, he discovered that, well, what would happen is, they would always ring a bell before they brought in the food to feed the dogs. And after enough repetitions, he started to notice that instead of just salivating when the food was brought in, the dogs would hear the bell and start salivating. And so he kind of discovered this by accident, but then went on to do a lot of additional study. And now we understand that there's this principle that when two events occur repeatedly in a sequence, the first event will come to predict the second. And dogs can and do learn this very readily. They can learn, for example, that when they hear the crinkle of a bag, that they might be getting treats, which is why your dog might come running when they hear that bag crinkle, even if they're on the other side of the house. They can learn that when you grab the leash, that it means they get to go on a walk, which is why you simply picking up a leash and not even telling them what's going on means the dog might get really happy, jumpily, wiggly waggy, just from picking up the leash. You may notice if you get a dog the first day, or maybe perhaps the first week, they might not react to you picking up the leash, but if they really like walks, you'll start to see their behavior change earlier, and it's just fascinating to watch how this changes. And so this principle is really beneficial to us because once we understand it, we can manipulate it to our advantage to teach our dogs the things that we actually want them to learn. Hey, Jason, howdy from Tennessee. Are you traveling again or still? Seems like you're always howdy from somewhere. Anyway, so yeah, so we might not necessarily need our dogs to understand that bag crinkle means come running, but once we understand that principle, we can change it so that the dog understands that when we say Fido come, it means come running, right? We can really, we can manipulate it. And this is essentially what we do when we are training our dogs. Tish Merriman Perry, sorry we were late. Oh, you guys are both on. You're so sweet. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. This one's exciting for me because I find all of it so fascinating, and I wish there were more time in the day because there's always more to learn. But this is just kind of a little overview that I wanted to share with you guys. So, yes, so the cool thing about this classical conditioning principle is that we can actually use it to change emotions. We can change how our dogs feel about things. It's not, dog training isn't just about changing behavior. We can actually change their involuntary responses to stuff that happens, right? A dog salivating at the sound of a bell with Pavlov, salivation is involuntary. And for our dogs, them having an emotional response to something that happens is involuntary. And how cool is that, that we can actually cause these involuntary reactions to happen? Now, of course, by changing their emotions, we can change their behavior, because when a dog feels differently about something, they're going to react behaviorally different to that thing. So this is what I mean by we can manipulate this principle to teach dogs what we actually want them to learn. So you can use this to teach a dog who maybe dislikes going to the vet. You can teach them to love going to the vet. You can teach a dog who avoids and maybe fights having their nails trimmed. You can teach them to come running for a manicure. Like, how cool is that, right? So yeah, I mean, and these are just a couple of examples. This is what dog training is all about. It's very cool. And so the other kind of, there's really two founding scientific principles that we understand now that we employ every day in dog training. But these are also things that happen. These are also things that happen, like I said, with or without our knowledge, with or without our participation. These are happening with or without us. And so once we understand them, we can use them to shift our dog's feelings and behavior, which is super, super cool. Jason says, don't let her fool you. Tish is hoping to learn some tricks to retrain this old dog. Well, you know, and that is the cool thing, is that I'm speaking about this from a dog training perspective, but like classical conditioning and the next one, which I'm getting to, operant conditioning, they work on us too. They work on all living things. Now, I will say that humans are a lot more complicated, and I would not dare get into human training, but the principles are the same. And so anyone who is training any dog anytime ever is going to be using these principles. So it pays to understand them. So let's talk about operant conditioning. This is the second way that we kind of approach a behavior change. And this one says that if a consequence of an action is pleasant, that action or that behavior becomes more likely to occur in the future. And a consequence that is unpleasant means that the preceding behavior becomes less likely to occur in the future. We call this Thorndike's law of effect, and this was really fleshed out, and the label, the terminology or the jargon that we use to describe this principle nowadays was really coined by B.F. Skinner, who did a lot more research in this area. And it's not simply that pleasant consequences encourage behavior and unpleasant consequences discourage behavior, but we also know from Skinner's study that the time between the behavior and the start of the consequence matters and impacts how well the learner understands that connection. And with dogs, this has to be very fast. Tish says, all right, now I'm really interested. There is hope for our dogs as well as the hubby. Yeah. It as well as us, you know, this is really cool. And if you ever talk to like therapists, life coaches, anybody in the human behavior change kind of world of psychology, you know, they're going to understand these principles too. And if you understand them, you can use them to help change your own behavior. I am trying to do this too with developing a new yoga habit this year, you know, and Jason, you know, you don't have to worry about Tish knowing this stuff, because the beautiful thing and part of my own training philosophy is that just because you understand this and can manipulate the principles doesn't mean that it's bad. You know, if you are the one being whose behavior, you know, someone's trying to change, if they're doing it right, the process is going to be awesome for you. It's going to help your relationship. It's such a beautiful thing. And I love that you guys brought this up, because this is kind of like why I get so excited about this and why I love talking about training as a science and an art is because it's like I can't even, my brain explodes every time because I'm like, this stuff is so cool. And actually, this is perfect. This is a perfect segue because from the study of this principle of the law of effect, we also know now that using those unpleasant consequences, if you use unpleasant consequences to try and reduce a behavior that someone does that you don't like, those unpleasant consequences can actually cause a lot of insidious side effects that we don't always intend. Then they can create more problems than the problem behavior that you started with. A dog example, I'm going to stick to dogs here because dogs is what I know. But might be, if you have a dog who pulls on the leash when you walk them, a lot of trainers today still recommend using leash corrections, meaning you kind of give a sharp jerk on the leash when they pull in order to discourage the pulling. The breakdown there being, that the behavior we're trying to modify is pulling on leash. We want to reduce the pulling on leash, so we apply a negative consequence or an unpleasant consequence, and hopefully we see pulling on leash reduced. But the type of side effect that could occur when you use negative consequences like that, or unpleasant consequences, that language it matters, might be that, let's say what is happening is that dog pulls when he gets excited because he sees a person. But every time he sees that person, and so he gets so excited and he starts walking fast and he pulls on the leash, and then you give him a quick leash pop. With repetition, he may start to feel like, man, every time I see a person, there's this sharp pain in my neck. People cause sharp pain, and so instead of their excitement, kind of going back to that, the first principle I talked about, the classical conditioning, they start to feel like, man, seeing people causes me pain. I better try and scare those people off so that I don't get hurt anymore. And what you've done, instead of reducing pulling on the leash, well, maybe you've done that too, but instead of just reducing the pulling on the leash, you may have also created a dog who is afraid or aggressive towards people, right? There's these unpleasant side effects that can come along with using unpleasant consequences. Some other things that could happen in that scenario are, the dog doesn't like having their leash put on, or the dog doesn't like going on walks at all because they get leash popped all the time. And it can really degrade your relationship with that dog, or cause more behavior problems that you didn't want. Let's see. Jesse says, can we use them on David? Yeah, you can absolutely use them on David. But careful, because he can use them on you too. Tish said, yeah, cause resentment. I want to know if it has worked on David at all. Guys, that messing with human behavior is a whole can of worms. I don't know if you want to go there, but it happens whether I'm trying to or not. Yes, absolutely, it works. With or without my participation. Like I said, this stuff is happening all the time. It's just, do we know enough to exploit them in our favor, right? Jason says, Jesse, oh, I looked up and saw you beat me to the David question. You guys are funny. Oh, hey, David. Define leash pop. Sometimes they call them leash corrections. Basically, it's a harsh jerk on the leash when the dog is pulling. The intention is to stop the dog from pulling, but as I've been describing, often you get a lot of other things that you didn't really want to happen. So that is why I would approach pulling on leash in an entirely different manner, entirely different training methods. That's just one example, and it's why I don't use. I don't like to use unpleasant consequences at all if I can help it. And it is why I have a list here of all the other things I would never use in dog training. Prong collars, shock collars, choke collars, pinch collars, electric fences, leash corrections, spray bottles, penny cans, scolding your dog, alpha rolling, scruffing, all of these things and more are commonly taught training methods that would be unpleasant consequences for the dog, and which can cause negative side effects and cause you more problems in the long run. So I do not recommend any of this stuff, and it is because of those consequences that you don't want to happen. They say, or I've heard, I'm not sure who it was, but I've heard said that punishment starts where knowledge ends. And I think that what that's really saying is that we resort to punishment of any kind, whether it's this stuff or any other punishment you can think of, but we resort to those sorts of methods to change behavior when we don't know what else to do. We kind of feel like we're at the end of our rope. Something needs to happen, and I just don't know what else to do about it. That's when we feel like we have to use punishment. It's when we start to feel like that's necessary to get the results that we want. Now, I fully admit that I do not know everything. Far from it. I don't even know everything about dog training. But I know enough to know that I don't even want to start to tread in these waters. This stuff, like I said, is so insidious, and you don't have control over what those side effects might be. But I do know that they are going to destroy your relationship and destroy the dog's trust in you. And you may have heard me say before, I'll say it a million times more, trust is the most important thing and always at the core of everything I do with my animals. So if I do have a behavior challenge on my hands that I don't know what to deal with, instead of resorting to a method of punishment like this, I'm going to ask someone else who knows more than I do. That's how important this is to me. It's a core part of who I am as a person, as a trainer, as an animal lover, and as a dog mom. This stuff is crucial. Now, I've touched on a couple of the core scientific principles that we use every day in dog training, our classical and operant conditioning. But I don't want to leave you thinking that that's all the science that goes into it. There is loads more. And here's another just example list, just to name a few of the things that we study to really understand how we are affecting behavior, so that we can get better results. You know, we've got habituation, sensitization, learned irrelevance, spontaneous recovery, contrast effects, reinforcement schedules, the Premack principle, overshadowing, preparedness, how dogs communicate, and how they perceive the world. All of this stuff goes into our understanding of dogs and how we influence them. And again, it doesn't stop there, but there's so much science that goes into dog training, and that science is beautiful. And this is why I get so excited about it. It's because like an astronomer who sees a black hole for the first time, or even just looking up at the night sky and knowing what's going on up there, or maybe like a geneticist who's sequencing a genome and seeing how all these genes fit together, or a chemist observing how different molecules interact. Like, these are people who study the science of their craft, and they're looking at it with this wide-eyed wonder, and it's beautiful. It's like, this is just so cool, guys. And it is the complexity and the intricacy and the inner workings of behavior, in my case, that I find so beautiful. So the more you learn, the more you see that, and that's what I hope to share with you here. Let me pause for a moment to get to Tish's question. She says, honestly, our Shih Tzu will not let me touch her toes to trim nails or fur. What can be done there? Ooh, Tish, I'm working on a class, and I will let you know if you'd like to join me, but I plan to go into very great detail because I love teaching this stuff, and I love working on it with my own dog. soon to be my dogs, plural, because our puppy's coming. But yeah, thank you, Impartial Geek. The more you know, absolutely. So yeah, so science is beautiful. And I think this is a lovely little segue to get into the art part of dog training, right? Because beauty is art, art is beauty. But it's dog training's not art simply because it's beautiful. There's more to it there too. I say that dog training is an art also because our world is very complex, and when we're dealing with behavior, we are dealing with living beings, complicated life forms, and often more than one species. As a professional dog trainer myself, I'm maybe working with both a dog and a human, and that relationship, or sometimes it's more than that. It might be the dog and the human and a cat, or who knows, could be dog and livestock, but usually it's not just complicated living beings, but more than one type. And thank you. I worked hard on my slides. I'm glad you like them. So working with this complex scenario, there is rarely only one right answer. When I was still in school, my favorite subjects tended to be math and science, and I think that I liked them then because I liked knowing that there was one right answer, that I could work through a problem and find that one solution, the perfect one, right? But that's why I say dog training is kind of an art too, because those fields of study like literature, writing, art, those are areas where there's almost unlimited right answers, right? And sometimes finding a right answer that fits the situation that you're in requires some creativity and some flexibility and some imagination. And again, that's art, right? Another reason that I kind of think of dog training as an art is because it's emotional. Animals bring out a lot of intense emotions for a lot of us. Sometimes working with animals means that we have to make tough calls that might cause us a lot of emotions. Sometimes it means that we have to recognize our own emotions and control those emotions so that we can accurately apply the science. So having an understanding of ourselves. In all cases, it means that we have to recognize and understand and respond in a thoughtful way to the emotions of our learners. So to be able to train to your highest potential really requires a sensitivity that's often found in artists, being in touch with your emotions, others' emotions, and being really sensitive to that is artful, I think. Yeah, Impartial Geek, sometimes I choke up just looking at Abby. I mean, I think that most of us anyway, we all feel that way about our animals. It's so emotional. And so that's why I don't like to forget that piece when you're going in, because you're also, and I didn't make a slide for this, but when we're working with an animal, you're always looking at that as a study of one, as one of my mentors and training idols, Dr. Susan Friedman, says, it's a study of one. We have these overarching principles. We know how those laws of behavior work, but how they get applied and interpreted to an extent, you really have to look at the learner in front of you and forget that this dog is not going to be exactly the same as the last dog. They're going to find different things motivating. They are going to be sensitive to different stimuli. And so, yeah, keeping that in mind can really, really help you when you're working with an animal. And so I think that at its core, training is a conversation. It is a dance. It is a give and take, a moment to moment exchange that requires on the fly adjustment and keen perception. So I love to go into a training situation with a plan, but always be ready to adjust when your learner needs you to. It is all about communicating with your learner and developing a trust with your learner and building that relationship. And what is all of that if not art, right? And I think that the beautiful, intricate, complex marriage of science and art, what is that if not magic, right? That's why I kind of always talk about dog training as magic too, is because it feels that way. It is beautiful and it is lawful, and all of the science and emotion and creativity that go into it add up to this really, really elegant practice. And I think that's pretty special. And so I hope that to have conveyed to you today that just how special and how really freaking cool this stuff is. So that is where I leave you. Cassandra says, that's going to be the toughest part when I get a new dog. Cusco was so special, it's going to be hard not to compare how he was with the new dog. Oh my goodness, Cassandra, you have touched a nerve, because as you know, we're getting a new puppy next week, and I've been having the same feelings. I'm nervous and anxious about how the new puppy's going to do, about how Dizzy's going to do with her, about how it's going to change my relationship with Dizzy and the household dynamic. I mean, there's a lot that goes on, and we feel deeply about this stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, but to an extent, we just kind of got to move ahead and see how it goes, and like I said, go in with a plan and adjust as necessary. Impartial Geek, it's really freaking cool. I'm excited for the puppy. Yeah, like a great many of us, I have a lot of, we'll call it self-doubt, call it imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it. And I have to have my my friends and colleagues remind me that, like, any puppy who's coming to live with me, like, is going to be in good hands. And so I should stop freaking out, but I do anyway. But that's just who I am. So, yeah. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Does dog training, do you think about it any differently now after having heard this? Does it feel any more exciting? Any cooler? Because I feel so passionate about it and so excited about it, and this is why I start speed talking and passion talking when I talk about anything having to do with dog training, is because it's so magical to me. So yeah, I like to share this with you guys. So anyway, I kind of put my lunch/dinner now on hold because I was late getting ready, but I will leave you with that. Let me know if you have any thoughts, and Tish, yeah, we will definitely circle back on the grooming stuff, because getting a dog to relax for that is pretty freaking cool, and causes us a lot less stress in the long run. Jason says that puppy will have a great time. Just make sure David shares some tacos. You hear that, David? I think you should get tacos tonight. I'm hungry. Okay. All right, cool. I'll let you guys go, and I will see you on Friday. Maybe. I don't know. I can't. I might be live, or I might just prepare a recorded video for you guys on Friday, because Friday is the start of a behavior conference that I like to go to every year. I'm very excited, and I don't want to miss any of it. I might take a break for this, but we'll see. Ooh, I'm so excited for that. Okay. Like I said, I love learning about this stuff. I love sharing it. And I look forward to talking to you guys again. All right. Have a good night.